The 2024 election. Whew, what an election season it has been. Today I'm going to look at the numbers and I'm going to look at the states that President Trump flipped in the 2024 election. And we're going to compare them to the 2020 election where Joe Biden won. I'm also going to look at 3 states that voted blue in the 2024 election, but that the Republican gained a good amount of ground in compared to the 2020 election. I'm also going to be looking at some of the demographics, age, race, gender, and how people voted in the 2020 election and how people voted in the 2024 election. So let's look at some, not all, but some of the numbers and statistics from the 2024 election. We're going to start with the 2020 election. And you can see in the 2020 election, Joe Biden is going to get 306 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 232 electoral votes. When you look at the popular vote, Joe Biden got 81,283,361 votes to Donald Trump's 74,222,960 votes. So Joe Biden would win the popular vote and the electoral vote in the 2022 election. When we move to the 2024 election, you will see that Donald Trump got 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226 electoral votes. So Donald Trump got 6 more electoral votes in 2024 than Joe Biden did in 2020. When you look at the total, the popular vote number, you will see that Kamala Harris got 73,755,129 votes to Donald Trump's 76,453,640 votes. So Donald Trump got about almost 3 million more votes on the popular vote, but that's not really the number I want to look at. So in 2020, let's go back to 2020. In 2020, between Trump and Biden, 155,506,221 votes total. In the 2024 election, there were only 150,155,603 votes total. That's a difference of 5,350,618 votes. Where are those 5.3 million people? Why did they not vote? And I think that's something that election talking heads, people who are really into electoral and election statistics and data are going to have to look at is why did over 5 million people sit this vote out? So when we actually look at the map from 2020 to 2024, Joe Biden flipped 5 states here that Donald Trump had won in 2016. And then in 2024, Donald Trump would flip 6 states and take all 7 swing states, including North Carolina, which they said was a swing state in this election, and he kept it red from the 2020 election. So we're going to dive in to a couple states that the Democrats won, but the Republicans gained ground in. And that first state's going to be New York. So looking at New York, you will see that in 2020, Joe Biden got 60.9% of the vote with about 5.2 million people voting for him. And in 2020, Donald Trump got 37.7% of the vote with about 3.2 million people voting for him. In 2024, you will see that Kamala Harris got 55.6% of the vote with 4.3 million people voting for her. And Donald Trump got 43.9% of the vote with about 3.4 million people voting for him. So the Democrats from 2020 to 2024 lost 1 million votes in New York State. The Republicans only picked up 200,000 more. So 800,000 people in New York State did not vote in this election. Because of that, the Republican went from 37.7% in 2020 to 43.9% in 2024. The Republicans did flip 4 counties in 2024, and some of those counties are right around New York City. So Nassau County, in 2020 in Nassau, Donald Trump, the Republican Party, let's just say the Republican Party, had 44.7% of the vote. In 2024, the Republican Party had 52.1% of the vote. Rockland County, so Rockland County right here, kind of above the New York area. In 2020, the Republican Party had 48.7% of the vote. And in 2024, the Republican Party had 55.7% of the vote. So even though Donald Trump will not win it, in 2020, Donald Trump, the Republican Party, got 27% of the vote in Queens. In 2024, the Republican Party got 38% of the vote. That's an 11-point gain. And then the last one we're going to look at in the New York area is going to be the Bronx. Okay, so the Bronx. In 2020, the Republican Party got 15.9% of the vote. In 2024, the Republican Party got 27.3% of the vote. That's like 12 points. I really think in New York, you're going to have commentators, you're going to have election analysts looking at, one, why 800,000 people didn't vote, and two, why did the Republican numbers go up in Democratic strong-held areas. So the next state we're going to look at is New Jersey, which the Democrats would keep in the 2024 election, but the numbers did change from the 2020 election. So in 2020, Joe Biden would get 57.1% of the vote with about 2.6 million voters, and Donald Trump would get 41.3% with about 1.9 million votes. If you look in 2024, Kamala Harris will get 51.7% of the vote with about 2.16 million votes, and Donald Trump would get 46.1% of the votes with 1.9 million total votes. So if you look from 2020 to 2024, the Democrats lost 500,000 votes and the Republicans gained 50,000. Where are those other 450,000 people? So going from 2020 to 2024, Trump would flip 5 counties in New Jersey. But I want to look at Hudson County, where Jersey City is, and New York, and you will see that in 2020, the Republican Party got 26.2% of the vote. And in 2024, the Republican Party got 34.3% of the vote, going up about 8%. And that's right outside New York City here. Something in these big cities is shifting, and I really think that the Democratic Party is going to have to, if they want to keep their strongholds in some of these bigger cities, they're really going to have to look at what is causing the shift. The last blue state we're going to look at that the Democrats kept a hold of in 2024, but lost some ground in, is going to be California. In 2020 in California, the Democrats got 63.5% of the votes with around 11.1 million voters, and the Republicans got 34.3% of the vote with about 6 million voters. So looking at 2020, the Democrats almost doubled the popular vote of the Republican candidate in California. When you move to 2024, the numbers are really shocking. So the Democratic Party got 58.8% of the vote with about almost 8.9 million voters. The Republican Party got 38% of the vote with 5.7 million voters. Both groups went down. The Democratic Party went down and the Republican Party went down. But the Democratic Party lost 2.2 million votes from 2020 to 2024. The Republican Party lost 294,000 votes from 2020 to 2024. But even with that, the Republican Party flipped 8 counties in California. To some people, the Republican getting 38% of the vote in California is nothing because the Democratic Party still got 58.8. If you know anything about how California has voted in the last years, this is a shocking number. And I really think it's going to make the Democratic Party do some inward looking at why not only this number went up for the Republicans, but why this number went down so significantly. I've looked at some of the stuff in the news that is coming out and polling that people just didn't want to vote this time because they honestly didn't like either candidate. So they decided just to sit it out. And that might be why almost 5 million less votes were cast in 2024 than were cast in 2020. Now we're going to move in to the states that were flipped in the 2024 election. And there are 6 states that were flipped, and we are going to start with Pennsylvania. On election night, everybody was watching the state of Pennsylvania to see if this 2020 map would look the same in 2024. And the answer was going to be no, it's not going to look the same. So when you look at the 2020 map, Joe Biden got 50% of the vote with 3,459,923 votes. And Trump got 48.8% of the vote with 3,378,263 votes. If you look in 2024, the Democratic Party will get 3,409,928 votes with 48.6%. And the Republican Party will get 3,535,662 votes with 50.4%. So the Democratic Party is going to go down 50,000 votes from 2020 to 2024. And the Republican Party is going to go up 157,000 votes from 2020 to 2024. Let's look at a couple counties that flipped. In Pennsylvania, there were 4 total counties that flipped. So I'm going to look at a couple. The first one I'm going to look at is Erie County. So in Erie County, the Republican candidate got 48.8% of the vote. And in 2024, the Republican candidate got 50.1%. It was only a 1.3% gain, but it was enough to win the county. Another county I want to look at is Bucks County. So in 2020, the Republican Party got 47.3% of the vote in Bucks County. And in 2024, they got 49.5% of the vote to the Democrats' 49.5% of the vote. But if you look, you can see there is about a 300 vote difference in Bucks County. So a very, very close, tight race, but the Republicans were able to flip that county. So like I said, in total from Pennsylvania, there were 4 counties that flipped, but the Democrats lost 50,000 votes and the Republicans gained 157,000 votes. The next state we're going to look at is the state of Georgia. So Georgia will be flipped in the 2024 election, but let's look at 2020 first. In 2020, the Democrats took 49.5% of the votes with a total vote count of 2,473,633. The Republicans took 49.2% of the vote with a total vote count of 2,461,854. In 2024, the Democrats are going to get 48.5% of the votes with 2,548,017 votes. And the Republicans are going to get 50.7% of the votes with 2,663,117 total votes. So in Georgia, the Democratic Party lost 75,000 votes and the Republican Party gained 200,000 votes. So there are 175,000 votes from here that were not cast here. From 2020 to 2024, the Republican Party would flip 4 counties in Georgia. So Georgia was one of those states that was watched really heavily in not only the 2020 election, but also in the 2024 election. Moving on to the state of Wisconsin, which would also flip from 2020 to 2024. So looking at the 2020 numbers first, you're going to have the Democratic Party with 49.4% of the votes with 1,630,866 votes total, and the Republican Party with 48.8% of the votes with 1,610,148 votes total. When you look at the 2024 numbers, you will see that the Democratic Party had 48.8% of the votes with 1,668,082 votes, and the Republican Party would have 49.6% of the votes with 1,697,764. Both parties would actually go up in vote totals. The Democratic Party would go up about 38,000 votes, and the Republican Party would go up about 87,000 votes. So this is one of the states where both parties actually went up. So more people actually voted in Wisconsin in the 2024 election than voted in Wisconsin in the 2020 election. Only one county flipped, and it's this county that's right outside Dane County, Sauk County. Not sure if I'm saying that right. That is the only county that would flip in Wisconsin. But like I said, both parties went up in total votes, but the Republican Party would outpace the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. The next state we're going to look at is going to be the state of Michigan, which would also flip in the 2024 election. In 2020, the Democratic Party would get 50.6% of the votes with 2,804,040 votes, and the Republican Party would get 47.8% of the votes with 2,649,852 votes. In 2024, the Democratic Party would get 48.2% of the votes with 2,733,987 total votes, and the Republican Party would get 49.6% of the votes with 2,814,311 total votes. In Michigan, the Democratic Party would lose about 71,000 votes from 2020, and the Republican Party would gain 164,000 votes from 2020. So we're looking at another state where about 100,000 people did not vote in the 2024 election. When you actually look at the map, you will see that Trump would only flip 2 counties in Michigan, but with the vote increase, it was enough to flip the state. Moving to Arizona, which was a state that was highly watched in both presidential races, you will see that in 2020, the Democratic Party got 49.4% of the vote with 1,672,143 votes total, and the Republican Party would get 49.1% of the votes with 1,661,686 total votes. That's a lot of sixes in that number. When we go to 2024, you will see that the Democratic Party got 46.7% of the votes with 1,571,066 votes, and the Republican Party with 52.2% of the votes with 1,759,999. So in Arizona, from 2020 to 2024, the Democratic Party is going to lose about 100,000 votes, and the Republican Party is going to gain about 95,000 votes. When you look at the map, you will see that Trump flipped 1 county, which is going to be Maricopa County, where Phoenix is. In 2020, the Republican Party had 48.1% of the vote in Maricopa County, and in 2024, the Republican Party had 51.2% of the vote in Maricopa County. And the last state we're going to look at, and the last state that was flipped in the 2024 election, is going to be the state of Nevada. In 2020, the Democratic Party got 50.1% of the votes in Nevada with 703,486 votes, and the Republican Party got 47.7% of the votes with 669,890. In 2024, the Democratic Party got 47.5% of the votes with 704,111 total votes, and the Republican Party would get 50.6% of the votes with 750,637 total votes. So if you look at the numbers from 2020 to 2024, both parties went up. The Democratic Party would go up 625 votes, and the Republican Party would go up 80,747 votes. But if you look at the map, no counties flipped. There were no counties that flipped. Just more people came out to vote in the 2024 election in Nevada. I do want to take a look at the Senate map for 2024, though. When we look at the presidential map for 2024, you have the 6 states that Trump flipped. When you look at the Senate map, you will see that of the 6 states that Trump flipped, 4 of them voted for a Democratic senator: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So that tells you something about those states, that they would vote Republican for their president, but Democratic for their senator. So what I'm going to end the video with is looking at different demographics and how they voted in 2020 compared to how they voted in 2024. So I'm going to start with age. So in 2020, we're going to look at 18 to 29-year-olds, 30 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 plus. So in 2020, 18 to 29-year-olds, 61% voted for Joe Biden, 36% voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 51% voted for Kamala Harris, 47% voted for Donald Trump. That is a 10% decrease for Democrats and an 11% increase for Republicans. 30 to 44, 55% voted for Joe Biden, 43% voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 50% voted for Kamala Harris, and 47% voted for Donald Trump. That is a 5% decrease in the Democratic Party and a 4% increase in the Republican Party. In 2020, for 45 to 64, 48% voted for Joe Biden, 51% voted for Donald Trump, and in 2024, 46% voted for Kamala Harris, and 52% voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 2% decrease for the Democratic vote and a 1% increase for the Republican vote. The only votes that didn't change were the 65 plus. In 2020, 48% for Joe Biden, 51% for Donald Trump, and in 2024, 48% for Kamala Harris, 51% for Donald Trump. Moving on to education. In 2020, people with no college degree voted 47% for Joe Biden and 51% for Donald Trump. And in 2024, no college degree voted 43% for Kamala Harris and 56% for Donald Trump. So that is a 3% decrease for the Democrats and a 5% increase for the Republicans. And then with a college degree, 57% voted for Joe Biden in 2020 and 41% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 56% voted for Kamala Harris and 43% voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 1% decrease for the Democrats and a 2% increase for the Republicans. Moving on to race and ethnicity. So in 2020, white voters voted 43% for Joe Biden and 55% for Donald Trump. And in 2024, white voters voted 43% for Kamala Harris and 56% for Donald Trump, which stays the same for Kamala Harris for the white voters, and it is a 1% increase for Donald Trump with the white voters. In 2020, 91% of black voters voted for Joe Biden, and 8% of black voters voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 83% of black voters voted for Kamala Harris, and 16% of black voters voted for Donald Trump. That is an 8% decrease for Kamala Harris and an 8% increase for Donald Trump. This is a vote that people were really watching during this election. Looking at the Latina vote, in 2020, 63% of Latina voters voted for Joe Biden, and 35% of Latina voters voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 55% of Latina voters voted for Kamala Harris, and 43% of Latina voters voted for Donald Trump. That is a 7% decrease for the Democratic Party and a 8% increase for the Republican Party. This was another demographic that was being watched very closely in the election. And then other races, you have 58% of voters of other races voting for Joe Biden, and 39% voting for Donald Trump in 2020. And in 2024, you have 55% of other voters voting for Kamala Harris and 41% voting for Donald Trump. So it is a 3% decrease for the Democratic Party and a 2% increase for the Republican Party. All right, let's go to location now. So in 2020, the urban vote, 66% voted for Joe Biden, 33% voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 63% voted for Kamala Harris, and 35% voted for Donald Trump. That is a 3% decrease for the Democrats and a 2% increase for the Republicans. In 2020, 54% of suburban voters voted for Joe Biden, and 44% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 52% of suburban voters voted for Kamala Harris, and 47% voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 2% decrease for the Democratic Party and a 3% increase for the Republican Party. And finally, the rural vote. In 2020, 38% of the rural voters voted for Joe Biden, while 60% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 35% of rural voters voted for Kamala Harris, while 63% voted for Donald Trump. That is a 3% decrease for the Democrats and a 3% increase for the Republicans. Now we're going to look at gender and age. So men 18 to 44 in 2020, 52% voted for Joe Biden, 45% voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 45% of men ages 18 to 44 voted for Kamala Harris, and 53% voted for Donald Trump. So this is a 7% decrease for Democrats and an 8% increase for Republicans. Looking at women, this was a category that was very muchly fought after. In 2020, 61% of women ages 18 to 44 voted for Joe Biden, while 37% of women ages 18 to 44 voted for Donald Trump. In 2024, 55% of women ages 18 to 44 voted for Kamala Harris, while 44% of women ages 18 to 44 voted for Donald Trump. That is a 6% decrease for the Democrats and a 7% increase for the Republicans. Men 45 plus. So in 2020, men 45 plus, 43% Joe Biden, 55% Donald Trump. In 2024, 42% Kamala Harris, 57% Donald Trump, which is a 1% decrease for the Democrats and a 2% increase for the Republicans. And then the final one on by gender and age is going to be women 45 plus. So you have 52% going for Joe Biden in 2020 and 47% for Donald Trump. And in 2024, you're going to have 51% going for Kamala Harris and 48% going for Donald Trump. So that's a 1% decrease for the Democrats and a 1% increase for the Republicans. Men by race. So in 2020, white men voted 40% for Joe Biden and 58% for Donald Trump. In 2024, it was 38% for Kamala Harris and 60% for Donald Trump, which is a 2% loss for the Democrats and a 2% gain for the Republicans. Black men in 2020 voted 87% Joe Biden, 12% Donald Trump. In 2024, they voted 74% Kamala Harris, 25% Donald Trump, which is a 13% decrease for the Democrats and a 13% increase for the Republicans. And the Latino men vote. So in 2020, 59% of Latino men voted for Joe Biden, while 38% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 49% of Latino men voted for Kamala Harris, while 48% voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 10% decrease for the Democrats and a 10% increase for the Republicans. So in 2020, 47% of white women voted for Joe Biden, while 52% of white women voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 46% of white women voted for Kamala Harris, and 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump. So that was a 1% decrease for the Democrats and a 1% increase for the Republicans. In 2020, 93% of black women voted for Joe Biden, while 6% of black women voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 89% of black women voted for Kamala Harris, while 10% of black women voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 4% decrease for the Democrats and a 4% increase for the Republicans. And finally, by women and race, you're going to have the Latina women. 66% of the Latina women voted for Joe Biden in 2020, while 32% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 59% of Latino women vote for Kamala Harris, while 39% voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 7% decrease for the Democrats and a 7% increase for the Republicans. And the final category is suburban men and women. So in 2020, 49% of suburban men voted for Joe Biden, while 48% of suburban men voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 46% of suburban men voted for Kamala Harris, while 52% of suburban men voted for Donald Trump. So that is a 3% decrease for the Democrats and a 4% increase for the Republicans. And the final category is suburban women. In 2020, 59% of suburban women voted for Joe Biden, while 40% voted for Donald Trump. And in 2024, 57% of suburban women voted for Kamala Harris, while 42% of suburban women voted for Donald Trump. So that was a 2% decrease for the Democrats and a 2% increase for the Republicans. The 2024 election. What are your thoughts? Are you surprised by any of the numbers? Let me know in the comments.